I don't want to be strong like man who look pretty. I want to be strong like bitch that fight bears in the forest.
Welcome to another episode of Bitch vs. Bear with your host, Amber.
Me?
And me, Sydney.
Woo!
The owners of Shield Maiden Trading Co. This is a show where we bitch, laugh, and chat about all things fitness, wellness related to women in the LGBTQIA plus community.
Sure is.
Sure is. Episode 65.
Episode 65. Here we go.
Amber's going to tell us a story.
I'm going to tell you a story. Gather round, children.
Gather around the snack check. If you can leave a comment of which comedy special that is, you get bonus points.
In a game where the rules are made up, but the points don't matter.
Exactly.
All right. Story time. Wandering through the vast landscape of Symptom Land, I felt like an explorer in an alien terrain. Each step was laden with uncertainty, and the air seemed thick with the unknown. The symptoms, like towering trees with twisted branches, loomed over me, casting shadows that whispered tales of mystery and confusion. My journey into Symptom Land began subtly, with whispers of discomfort that gradually grew into a cacophony of bodily protests. Headaches pulsed like distant drum beats, signaling an ominous rhythm. Fatigue draped itself over my shoulders like a heavy cloak, and I found myself navigating the terrain with limbs weighed down by an unseen burden. The landscape was dotted with crisscrossing rivers of pain that ebbed and flowed, their currents defying the logic of a healthy body. The map I clutched in my hand, a compilation of doctor's notes and test results, proved to be an unreliable guide. The symptoms twisted and turned, leading me down winding paths that seemed to defy conventional medical wisdom. Specialists in white coats stood at the crossroads, offering divergent opinions and contradictory diagnoses, each one adding to the labyrinth of confusion. In Symptom Land, time moved at its own pace. Days blurred into nights, and the ticking of the clock became a rhythmic reminder of the persistent uncertainty. Medical tests became the landmarks of my journey, each one promising revelation, yet often leaving me stranded in a landscape devoid of answers. The inhabitants of Symptom Land were a diverse bunch, the sharp pang of anxiety lurking in the shadows, the elusive specter of fatigue haunting every step, and the unpredictable storms of pain that swept through like sudden tempests. I felt like a lost traveler, adrift in a sea of symptoms that seemed to shift and change without warning. Friends and family, like distant voices on the wind, offered well-intentioned advice, yet their words echoed in the vastness of Symptom Land, often fading into the background noise of uncertainty. The isolation of the journey weighed heavily on me, a solitary wanderer in a landscape where the language of symptoms was both my adversary and my guide. Yet, amidst the disarray of symptoms and the confusing terrain, a flicker of resilience sparked within. Perhaps, I mused, the journey through Symptom Land wasn't about conquering the landscape, but learning to navigate its intricacies. The absence of a clear path became an invitation to forge one's own trail, to become an intrepid traveler armed with patience, courage, and the unwavering belief that, eventually, the fog would lift and clarity would emerge on the horizon. The end.
A journey through Symptom Land.
What a horrific journey, man.
Okay, so here's what excited me about going into this topic, because I think many of us at some point in our lives will have an experience where we feel like we're lost in Symptom Land.
It's true. I live there.
Yeah. And I don't think that that is an uncommon thing.
Yeah, I would
think
agree.
I think a lot of people do feel like they're an island and that they are lost in the Symptom Land and that it's only happening to them. And I hope, one, that this gets shared among people and it's like, oh, many of us feel these generic kind of things, and the doctors don't really know, and they come and go, and it ebbs and flows, and all of that.
Or the doctors aren't really paying attention, or they're not listening.
Or don't go consistently, so it's hard to
Yes.
catch, like, when it's in a certain point, like, yeah, I went to the doctor, but I felt fine, and then,
Right.
a month later, something happens that triggers some very generalized symptoms.
Right. What do you do with those general symptoms?
Exactly. It's like, and and we're gonna go into a little bit of what do you do,
Great.
but
Please tell me, what do you do?
well, it's you nothing that you don't know.
Damn.
Yeah, this is not some I'm not we're not gonna cure the medical mystery that is generalized symptoms and feeling, just kind of like plagued by something under the surface, but it's not so horrific that you have like an official diagnosis,
Yeah.
or not that it needs to be horrific to have one, but like where you can like pinpoint, and it's just
Mhm.
kind of
Things
s-
just generally don't feel right
yeah, a
or good.
blanket
Yeah.
of like just kind of heaviness.
Fog of symptom land.
Yeah. And I think there's a lot of people who have these things, and it's either because of like a chronic disease or an immune disorder
Mhm.
or other anomalies, or it could be in the interconnectedness of mind and body. There's a lot
Right.
of answers that are really hard to get to.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, how do it's hard. How do we live when doctors don't really know what's wrong with us, or we
Yeah.
don't really know what's wrong with us?
Yes.
And the first thing I can say is don't fucking Google it.
We've said this before.
Yeah, we have said this before because whatever your symptoms are, there is some kind of cancer with those same symptoms. and whatever and when you have like generic symptoms like headaches, fatigue, dizziness, the internet,
It can be everything.
yeah, the internet's going to tell you you might be fine or you might die in the next day or two. Like it's just one
The
end of the
vast range
spectrum.
of
Yeah. So like
okay.
looking up symptoms on the internet so you can read about what you could potentially have only kind of increases your anxiety and
Okay.
then starts that like downward spiral.
Ah,
So if you're
yes.
already feeling fatigue and stress and underlying, but this will not help. Googling does not help.
No. No, it does not. Can
And
attest.
when you gather that information, it's not like goes in one ear and out the other. We keep it in the back of our brain.
Mhm.
And then when we do go to the doctor, we think about those things. And we're like, "Oh, but it could be this. What about this? What about this?" And then you provide your doctor with so much information, it's hard for them to kind of comb through and really
Figure out
help
what's
you get to
yeah.
that stage of like being like, "Oh, now there's a name for it," or we have some resolution. So like don't don't Google. Don't Google. Do not Google. Put down the phone. Do not WebMD.
Keep Googling.
Stop Googling. It's not good for you. It's not good for your doctor. It's not productive.
Right.
Okay.
Got it. No Googling.
No Googling. The other other important thing is you have to remember you still have to take care of yourself. And this is
That
really
seems like a lot
difficult.
of
But here are some things
work.
that you can do to help. Your body cannot heal without consistent sleep and a healthy diet. So,
Fair.
at bare minimum, go to sleep and wake up at the same time every day, even on weekends when we have a tendency to be like, I've been sleeping. Drink more water. It will never hurt to have a little more water. Not a lot more water, a little more water. Eat more fruits and vegetables and nuts.
Hmm.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. Try and avoid foods that are processed, things that have a lot of added sugar. This is going to be very hard for some of us.
Mhm.
Exercise,
Yes.
especially when we're battling an illness, like that can be
Yeah.
really hard. So if you're somebody who has been diagnosed with cancer and you still have, all the generic symptoms, we understand that exercise can be a really big hurdle, but it's important to do a little bit what you can.
Yeah.
Whether that's going for a walk, whether it's just sitting outside and being mindful
Yeah.
and like doing some gentle yoga. Um
Mhm.
yeah, we know that the consistency with exercise can be really hard, but it's
Yeah.
really really important. Spend time outdoors.
Mhm. Mhm.
Nature is restorative, and we should really kind of start to utilize that for those of us who are struggling with those unnamed things. It's impressive what 20 to 30 minutes outside can do for our body and our mind every day,
Mhm.
even if it's inclement weather. And I say this because, like, I promise you, you will not melt in the rain.
My tiny dog might.
Your tiny dog might, but you won't. So it's really easy to talk ourselves out of like getting outside when the weather is
Mhm.
bad. But put a raincoat on, put an umbrella on, or over you. Don't put an umbrella on. Be
Oh, is
interesting.
this like one of those little hats that's an umbrella?
Yeah.
Mhm.
And just try and spend 5 minutes out. Like work up to it if it's not something that you enjoy doing. But time outdoors can be really beneficial and
Mhm.
really healing.
Agreed.
Yep. So another thing is the part of taking care of yourself that can be a real struggle is taking care of your mind during all of this.
Ah, yes.
So talking to a professional such as a therapist can be a really great resource for you. Not that
Yeah.
they can necessarily help you diagnose and like do
Physical
that.
ailments.
Yeah. But being sick is really depressing.
Yeah.
And so chronic fatigue, chronic pain, chronic anything wears on your mental health and
Mhm.
you don't always realize that that's happening.
Exactly.
And so having somebody to talk to and make sure that you can have an outlet for that and they can help guide a little bit of like, are you aware? They can
Yeah.
provide some useful feedback to you.
Mhm. Mhm.
And then lastly, be persistent. Like
Mhm.
with if your symptoms are being ignored, then you should be asking your doctor things like, what might this be?
Yeah.
Like, you're not Googling, so you need to be asking the professional and encouraging
Exactly.
them to look a little deeper, right?
Yeah.
You can ask, what do I do if the symptoms get worse?
Mhm.
Because they might say, if you go back to last week, oh, that's normal.
Yeah.
That's normal for your age. That's normal for your body. That's normal for whatever. So say, okay, what do I do if they get worse?
Yeah. What if it becomes not normal?
Yeah, exactly.
What then?
Yeah. So, like, those kinds of questions help doctors kind of stop and consider the options
Yeah.
because we all need that. Sometimes we need somebody to pump the brakes for us and be like, oh, pull us out, make us start
Yeah.
questioning things.
I mean, if you're their 10th appointment of the day and
They're
you have
human.
generalized things, they're like, "Oh, yeah, like that's
That's normal.
fine.
Yeah.
You're X age.
You're
You're
36, you got
fine."
kids. Yeah, you're tired.
Makes sense.
Makes sense.
Go take a nap.
Yeah. Um, Other ways you can kind of phrase it is like, what might this be? Just because you have one established condition doesn't mean that you can't have secondary
Yeah.
issues. And so like having giving them that perspective too of like, okay, so I'm used to living with these XYZ symptoms. These other things, what else could this be? Because
Yeah.
they have never been a part of group A before.
Yeah.
So like that can be really helpful.
So are things getting worse or is something else going on?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. Is it progressing or is there some secondary issue that I could maybe alleviate and then only
And
have
then
to
we can
deal
just
with.
focus on the original
Yeah,
issues.
exactly. If you feel like your primary care doctor doesn't take your symptoms seriously, ask for a referral to a specialist
Mm.
because your primary care is a general physician and they don't know everything under the sun.
Yeah.
And so it's okay to go to a different practice or get a second opinion. You know your body. And if something feels off, there probably is.
Fair. Yeah.
Yeah. And a fresh set of eyes can be extremely helpful. And it's not that your primary care doesn't want to help you, it just might not be in their wheelhouse.
Yeah. It might be beyond their general practice.
Hmm.
Yeah. Makes sense.
Also, with being persistent, is making sure like it's okay if you have to visit multiple doctors. That being said, we understand that the healthcare system, we get penalized,
Mm.
then blah, blah,
Yeah.
blah, all the things. But try and frame it for yourself as an opportunity rather than this burden.
Yeah.
You're getting to rule out different things from different specialists and things like that by visiting multiple doctors. Because
Makes sense.
really, diagnostics in terms of the medical sense is often not pointing to one thing and saying, yes, it's this. It's eliminating all of the other possibilities that it could be to give you a diagnosis. So,
I mean,
like,
that makes sense. Bodies are very complicated machines.
exactly. So, very rarely are you going to go in and your doctor's going to be like, out of the textbook, I'm picking this one because you have every one of your symptoms and everything lines up.
Yeah.
It's mostly just eliminating and being like, okay, nope, it's
Well,
probably
let's
not that
test
one.
for this thing. Okay, nope. Let's test for the next thing.
Do you remember House?
Yes. Oh my god, I loved
They
House.
always, it's
Test
never
everything.
lupus.
Till the one time it is lupus.
Exactly. But that's really what it is like if you ever
Especially
watched that his diagnostics, it was eliminating all of the other
Mhm.
possibilities to leave you with the probable.
Yeah.
That's
And I think that's especially true if you're having very general symptoms. Like if there isn't anything super specific going on,
mhm.
it's probably going to be, it could be any variety of things.
Yeah,
So, like, how do you just pick one? Like, you have to go
process of
through and
elimination.
get rid of everything. Yeah,
Exactly.
makes sense.
So, lastly, one thing you can do, and this is just for anybody, not even people who are having symptoms of anything, is preventative screenings.
Mm,
So,
yes.
understanding and knowing what screening should be performed routinely and based on like your age, your gender, and race, because those things do differ.
Hmm.
There's a list of preventative screenings for adults by that criteria, in fact. And so you can discuss it with your medical practice. If
Hmm.
they refuse to do relevant routine screenings,
Hmm.
definitely go find another medical practice that is more conscientious and aware of why different genders, ages, and races have different medical concerns.
Yeah.
Like, you are an individual and you are your own advocate. And if they're just lumping you into a boat like Noah's Ark,
Yeah.
all the animals just doesn't matter. We know that it does. And so you need to go find out what those screenings are so that you can advocate for yourself.
Hmm. That makes sense.
Yeah. And
Well,
lastly, listen to your body, talk to your doctor, and don't give up. Like, you don't have to be lost in symptom land forever. You might be, but you don't have to be. You can take steps to try and find your way out. It's not a necessarily the most detailed map.
it's a very vague map
It's a vague map. It's like a treasure map with just a dotted line
with no landmarks
with
or,
no landmarks. Yeah.
yeah, very obscure landmarks and potentially nothing at the end.
Yeah. Yeah, it's exactly it. It's a treasure map. But
Because someone has already stolen your treasure.
hmm, sad. Makes me want to go watch Pirates of the Caribbean.
Right.
But
Yes.
I do think it's an important thing because so many of us do have these symptoms at one time or another in our lives. And it's just, we can get really kind of muddled with it and feel just awful
Hmm.
because we're like, we don't know what it is. Our doctors don't know what it is. And I just have to live like this now. But you don't sometimes.
Yeah.
But there are always things you can do to help alleviate those. So
Fair.
I think try doing these 4 things.
Hmm.
Well, don't
Well,
Google.
do not Google. Maybe listen to these four.
Yeah, listen to these 4 things, and it might set you up a little bit better, either in the future or if it's something that you're experiencing right now.
Awesome.
Yeah,
And as always, keep listening to us
keep listening to us.
as we
We
talk about fun things.
we're gonna have our last episode of January.
Ooh,
Wild.
man,
No,
that's insane.
2024. That's insane.
Can't
Yeah,
believe it.
it'll be a good one, as they all are. Sorry.
Obviously.
Yeah, yeah.
That's why
Keep,
you're listening to us.
exactly. So keep listening. Follow, share, like.
Share your own story if
Yeah,
you would like.
if you would like.